Hello friends, in this video, we are going to take a 35 GK quiz on the topic of First in India Woman. We'll have a revision at the end of the video, so make sure you stick around. So whether you are preparing for competitive exams or just interested in learning more about the history of women in India, this video is for you. Let's get started. GK at your tips with your study, your pace. Question 1. Who was the first woman to receive Nobel Prize? The answer is Mother Teresa. Question 2. Who was the first woman pilot in Indian Air Force? The answer is Harita Kaur Dayal. Question 3. Who was the first woman to climb Mount Everest twice? The answer is Santosh Yadav. Question 4. Who was the first lady to become Miss World? The answer is Rita Faria. Question 5. Who was the first woman judge in Supreme Court? The answer is Mrs. Meera Sahib Fatima Bibi. Question 6. Who was the first woman president of Indian National Congress? The answer is Mrs. Annie Besant. Question 7. Who was the first woman ambassador? The answer is Miss C.B. Muthamma. Question 8. Who was the first woman Chief Justice of High Court? The answer is Mrs. Leela Seth, Himachal Pradesh High Court. Question 9. Who was the first woman to climb Mount Everest? The answer is Bachendri Pal. Question 10. Who was the first woman to receive Bharat Ratna? The answer is Mrs. Indira Gandhi. Question 11. Who was the first woman to receive Jnanpith Award? The answer is Ashpurna Devi. Question 12. Who was the first woman Air Vice Marshal? The answer is P. Bandopadhyay. Question 13. Who was the first woman Speaker of a State Assembly? The answer is Shano Devi. Question 14. Who was the first woman chairperson of Indian Airlines? The answer is Sushma Chawla. Question 15. Who was the first woman to receive Ashoka Chakra? The answer is Neerja Bhanot. Question 16. Who was the first woman Lieutenant General? The answer is Punita Arora. Question 17. Who was the first and last Muslim woman ruler of India? The answer is Razia Sultan. Question 18. Who was the first woman Olympic medal winner? The answer is Karnam Malleshwari in the year 2000. Question 19. Who was the first woman IPS officer? The answer is Mrs. Kiran Bedi. Question 20. Who was the first woman minister in a government? The answer is Rajkumari Amrit Kaur. Question 21. Who was the first woman to receive Jnanpith Award? The answer is Ashapurna Devi. Question 22. Who was the first woman Director General of Police? The answer is Kanchan Chaudhary Bhattacharya. Question 23. Who was the first woman Governor of a state in Free India? The answer is Mrs. Sarojini Naidu. Question 24. Who was the first woman Asian Games gold medal winner? The answer is Kamlajit Sandhu. Question 25. Who was the first woman chairman of Union Public Service Commission? The answer is Rose Million Bethu. Question 26. Who was the first woman airline pilot? The answer is Durba Banerjee. Question 27. Who was the first woman Prime Minister? The answer is Mrs. Indira Gandhi. Question 28. Who was the first woman lawyer? The answer is Cornelia Sorabji. Question 29. Who was the first woman honors graduate? The answer is Kamini Roy, 1886. Question 30. Who was the first woman graduates? The answer is Kadambini Ganguly and Chandramukhi Basu, 1883. Question 31. Who was the first woman judge? The answer is Anna Chandi, District Court Judge in 1937. Question 32. Who was the first woman judge in Supreme Court of India? The answer is Kumari Justice M. Fatima Bibi. Question 33. Who was the first woman to cross English Channel? The answer is Aarti Saha. Question 34. Who was the first woman President of United Nations General Assembly? The answer is Mrs. Vijaya Lakshmi Pandit. Question 35. Who was the first woman Chief Minister of an Indian state? The answer is Mrs. Sucheta Kripalani.